For a long time, it looked like nobody could stop Conor McGregor. Every bold prediction he made somehow became reality, and every opponent who laughed at his confidence eventually paid the price. But there comes a point when confidence crosses the line into overconfidence, and that's exactly when the sport found a way to humble him. After shocking the MMA world by knocking out Jose Aldo in just 13 seconds to capture the UFC featherweight championship, McGregor looked untouchable. He wasn't just winning fights, he was convincing everyone that he could beat anyone, anywhere, under any circumstances. His next target was the lightweight title, where he was scheduled to face Rafael dos Anjos. But when the Brazilian suffered a broken foot and was forced to withdraw, the entire matchup changed overnight. Stepping in on short notice was Nate Diaz, a fighter known for his toughness, relentless pressure, and absolute refusal to back down. Even with the new opponent, McGregor's attitude never changed. As always, he tried to win the battle before the cage door even closed. He mocked Diaz's payday, questioned his abilities, and even took jabs at his intelligence, convinced that another psychological victory would make fight night even easier. But Diaz wasn't interested in trading words. He simply waited for the opportunity to answer everything with his fists. When the fight began at UFC 196, it looked like McGregor's confidence was completely justified. He controlled the opening round with sharp, accurate striking and even dropped Diaz twice. Every clean shot seemed to reinforce the belief that another dominant McGregor performance was unfolding. The only problem was that Nate Diaz refused to break. No matter how many punches landed, he kept walking forward, absorbing the damage and patiently waiting for the momentum to shift. That moment finally arrived in the second round. McGregor's explosive pace began catching up with him, and the energy that fueled his fast start slowly disappeared. Diaz immediately recognized it. Instead of giving his opponent room to recover, he increased the pressure, landing punch after punch while forcing McGregor into uncomfortable exchanges. For the first time in the fight, the Irish superstar looked exhausted. Desperate to slow everything down, McGregor attempted a takedown. But the gamble failed. Diaz quickly gained the dominant position on the ground, advanced into control, and moments later locked in the choke that forced McGregor to tap. Just like that, the man who had spent months predicting another masterpiece was left staring at one of the biggest setbacks of his career. After the fight, Diaz made it clear that beating the sport's biggest star proved exactly where he belonged. If McGregor received worldwide recognition, he believed he had earned the same respect after defeating him. For Conor, it was a painful reality check. His confidence had finally met someone who simply refused to be intimidated. To his credit, McGregor didn't run from the defeat. Instead, he accepted the loss and immediately promised that the rematch would tell a different story. Unlike many of his bold claims, this was one he actually delivered on. Later that same year, the two met again, and after 5 grueling rounds, McGregor edged out a hard-fought majority decision victory. It wasn't easy, but it showed that he could learn from failure and come back stronger. That momentum carried straight into UFC 205, where he produced one of the finest performances of his career against Eddie Alvarez, capturing the lightweight championship and becoming the first fighter in UFC history to hold titles in 2 weight classes at the same time. For a moment, it seemed the setback against Diaz had only made him better. But success has a way of rebuilding the same confidence that defeat once destroyed. Before long, McGregor was convinced there was no challenge beyond his reach, not even against one of boxing's greatest champions. Mayweather with his confidence fully restored, McGregor set his sights on something almost everyone considered impossible. He believed he could step into a boxing ring and defeat the undefeated Floyd Mayweather at his own game. After months of negotiations and endless contract discussions, the crossover super fight was finally made official for August 2017. The event promised hundreds of millions of dollars, massive global attention, and a spectacle unlike anything combat sports had seen before. Even UFC President Dana White couldn't hide his excitement as anticipation for the historic showdown reached another level. As the promotional tour kicked off, packed arenas filled with fans eager to witness the verbal war before the actual fight. And if there was one stage McGregor always felt comfortable on, it was a microphone. He walked into every press conference with the same swagger that had carried him through the UFC, convinced that this time would be no different. Standing in front of thousands of fans, McGregor spoke with the same certainty that had made him one of the biggest stars in combat sports. He repeatedly promised that Floyd Mayweather's perfect record would finally come to an end. According to Mystic Mac, the unbeaten boxing legend wouldn't just lose, he'd be knocked out. It was another fearless prediction. But this time, the challenge was unlike anything McGregor had faced before. When the opening bell rang, he came out exactly as he promised. Aggressive combinations, constant pressure, and a pace designed to overwhelm Mayweather before the veteran could settle into the fight. For the first few rounds, the strategy actually seemed to work. Mayweather spent much of the early fight defending himself while McGregor confidently pushed forward, giving fans hope that the impossible might actually happen. But experienced champions don't panic. They wait. Mayweather understood exactly what was happening. Instead of matching McGregor's pace, he allowed him to burn through his energy while patiently collecting information. Round after round, the momentum quietly began to change. Just like the night against Nate Diaz, McGregor's explosive start came with a heavy price. His movement slowed. His punches lost their sharpness. The confidence was still there, but the stamina wasn't. Sensing the opportunity, Mayweather finally shifted into attack mode. The undefeated champion walked McGregor down, landing cleaner shots with every exchange while the exhausted Irishman struggled to respond. By the 10th round, there was little left to stop the inevitable. Mayweather unleashed a relentless combination that forced the referee to step in and wave the fight off, handing McGregor a TKO defeat. Another bold prediction had collapsed under reality. For the second time in only a few years, McGregor's confidence had been brutally tested on the biggest stage imaginable. Most fighters would have taken that as a lesson. But for McGregor, an even greater storm was already waiting. One that would become the most personal, most chaotic, and perhaps the most humbling chapter of his entire career. By this point, McGregor had earned more money than most fighters could ever dream of. His attention gradually shifted beyond fighting as he focused on growing businesses and expanding his empire outside the Octagon. With so much time spent away from competition, the UFC eventually stripped him of the lightweight championship. The vacant title was claimed by Khabib Nurmagomedov, who defeated Al Iaquinta at UFC 223 to become the new king of the division. But before that event even took place, everything exploded into chaos. Just days before UFC 223, tensions between the two camps reached another level after Khabib confronted Artem Lobov, one of McGregor's closest friends, over comments that had been made. News of the confrontation spread quickly. McGregor didn't let it slide. Furious over what had happened, he flew from Dublin to New York with a group of teammates, determined to confront Khabib in person. What happened next became one of the most infamous incidents in UFC history. McGregor stormed into the arena loading area and hurled a metal dolly through the window of a bus carrying several UFC fighters, including Khabib. Shattered glass flew everywhere. The attack left fighters Michael Chiesa and Ray Borg injured badly enough that both were forced to withdraw from their scheduled bouts. The incident shocked the entire MMA world. Even UFC President Dana White openly expressed his anger as the promotion suddenly found itself dealing with one of the biggest controversies it had ever faced. For Khabib, however, the incident only added fuel to an already growing rivalry. This was no longer about a championship. It had become deeply personal. Months later, the UFC officially announced the long-awaited showdown between McGregor and Khabib at UFC 229. Ironically, footage from the bus attack became part of the promotion itself, reminding fans just how much hatred had built between the two men. The build-up quickly turned toxic. McGregor fired relentless verbal attacks, dragging Khabib's family, friends, and personal life into the rivalry while insisting there could never be peace between them. Khabib chose a different approach. He rarely responded to the insults. Instead, he stayed calm, repeating only one message. Everything would be settled inside the cage. And once the Octagon door closed, he intended to make McGregor pay for every single word. When the cage door finally shut, all the insults, controversies, and months of tension disappeared. Only one question remained. Could McGregor back up everything he had said? The answer came faster than anyone expected. Khabib refused to give him a moment to settle. Whether the fight was standing or on the ground, he controlled nearly every exchange with complete confidence. Then came the second round. McGregor was caught by a crushing overhand right that sent him crashing to the canvas, shocking fans who had rarely seen him in that position. And Khabib didn't waste the opportunity. He followed him to the mat and unleashed relentless ground and pound, forcing McGregor into survival mode instead of offense. Conor showed incredible toughness by making it through the punishment, but escaping the round wasn't the same as escaping the fight. By the fourth round, Khabib imposed his wrestling once again. He dragged McGregor to the canvas, secured back control, and slowly tightened a rear naked choke until there was no escape. McGregor tapped. The rivalry had finally reached its conclusion. And Khabib had delivered on every promise without needing endless trash talk beforehand. What happened after the submission only added another unforgettable chapter to an already historic night. Fueled by months of personal attacks, Khabib climbed over the cage and charged toward Dylan Dennis, one of McGregor's teammates, sparking absolute chaos inside the arena. Within seconds, a massive brawl erupted. Members of Khabib's team entered the Octagon, punches were thrown, security rushed in from every direction, and one of the wildest scenes in UFC history unfolded before a stunned crowd. The celebration disappeared beneath complete disorder. McGregor never addressed the crowd afterward. Khabib did. For many fans, the result spoke louder than anything either fighter had said during the build-up. The man who once believed nobody could intimidate him had experienced perhaps the biggest humbling of his entire career. Nearly 2 years passed before McGregor returned to the Octagon. This time, something felt different. The loud, aggressive version of Conor had been replaced by a calmer and far more respectful competitor. Gone were the endless insults. Instead, fans saw a fighter who appeared focused only on business. Inside the cage, that version of McGregor looked phenomenal. He dismantled Donald Cerrone in just 40 seconds, reminding everyone why he had once been considered one of the most dangerous finishers in MMA. It seemed as though the lessons from the Khabib defeat had truly changed him. But that new attitude was about to face another difficult test. McGregor returned to renew his rivalry with Dustin Poirier. Years earlier, he had stopped Poirier with ease. This rematch felt completely different. Again, McGregor remained respectful throughout the build-up, showing none of the hostility that had defined so much of his career. But once the fight began, respect couldn't change what happened inside the cage. Poirier fought with patience, mixed his attacks beautifully, and slowly took control as the fight progressed. Then came the finish. In the second round, Poirier landed the shots that finally put McGregor away, scoring a knockout that completely flipped the story of their rivalry. For the second straight defeat, McGregor handled the loss with surprising composure. Many believed the old Conor had disappeared for good. They couldn't have been more wrong. With the series tied at 1 win apiece, a trilogy became inevitable. And as soon as the fight was announced, the old McGregor returned. The respectful version was gone. In its place was the same outspoken fighter who once dominated headlines with relentless trash talk. He confidently predicted another knockout victory and promised that Dustin wouldn't survive the trilogy. Poirier answered with something far more personal. He publicly accused McGregor of failing to honor a promised $500,000 donation to the Good Fight Foundation, a claim that quickly became one of the biggest talking points leading into the event. The accusation ignited another war of words. McGregor responded with furious interviews, heated press conferences, and constant verbal attacks as emotions reached a boiling point before UFC 264. But once again, the confidence outside the cage didn't translate inside it. Near the end of the opening round, disaster struck. McGregor suffered a horrific broken tibia that instantly ended the fight, handing Poirier another victory under heartbreaking circumstances. Even with the fight over, the rivalry refused to cool down. The insults continued long after the result had been decided, while Poirier made it clear that the hostility went both ways. For a fighter whose career had been built on supreme confidence and fearless predictions, the journey also became a reminder that every bold statement carries a price. Sometimes that confidence creates legends. And sometimes, it creates the very moments that humble them forever.